What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are reviewing the final installment of the Saxon Chronicles and the saga of Uhtred, son of Uhtred, Seven Kings Must Die, the feature-length film set to wrap up the entire story. And the result is pretty much everything we've come to expect from The Last Kingdom. I was always intrigued to see how well the show adjusted to feature-length storytelling and how it would adapt to the different pace and the different kind of narrative structure being confined to a 2-hour film. And I think ultimately for me that's where Seven Kings Must Die as a film probably falters, is that it is way too overstuffed with plot. And that never really hindered the show because obviously you've got 10 episodes to flesh out those plot lines and interweave character arcs to build to a conclusion, whereas with only 2 hours the narrative has a lot of geography and narrative and characters to interact with and tie up. So obviously certain plot elements kind of have to get neglected and underdeveloped, same with certain characters. And where we'd normally be spending episodes with characters travelling from place to place, in this film by the next scene they're already at their next location where they need to be. And that is kind of expected and necessitated, I suppose, by the reduced runtime. That being said, only an hour 50 minutes, I feel like the show probably should have pushed for a more 2.5 hour runtime because there is so much plot substance to delve into and scenes could have been a little bit more longer and a little bit more fleshed out to explore character motivations and even spend a bit more time with new characters, because the film still finds narrative room to introduce characters we've never met before. But because I'm biased to this show and anything Viking, I can kind of overlook the plot issues and just focus on what it essentially is for all of us, which is Uhtred's swan song. And I think they really stick to the roots and the core of the character, which is this kind of guy who is always finding himself in the midst of conflict and finding himself as the best option to broker peace and mediate between warring parties, and that's kind of no different here. I don't think this film particularly tackles new ground for the character in any way, but it does serve as a very fitting epilogue to Uhtred's drama, giving us lots of what we've come to know and love about the character, you know, his sense of honour and nobility, his epic battle scenes, his inability to age, and his good banter with Finan and Sihtric. The stakes are obviously very high in this film, building naturally to that inevitable conclusion of the unification of England and how that goes about happening, and Uhtred's role within it despite not being written historically into those sagas. And I think Seven Kings Must Die does a good job of fulfilling that kind of narrative dream that The Last Kingdom always had. As a show, it was always much more confined in terms of budget. I don't think it had the kind of freedom that shows like Game of Thrones had or Vikings had, and you can kind of see that when it comes to the battles, but I've always been impressed with The Last Kingdom and how it does a lot with its budget. The final battle we get in this is kind of up there with some of the best battles of the show, the Battle of Brunanburh, and just the way they kind of live in the thick of it with you and kind of spend enough screen time with the shield wall and just this kind of frantic clashing of swords. I've always found The Last Kingdom's take on violence quite satisfying, and the brutality and the kind of chaos of it. And yes, while obviously we have those satisfying moments where our heroes are kind of being all fancy and hacking down people left, right and centre, always good to see how threats can come out of nowhere and take people down like that. And there is a big body count in this film, with some characters who you kind of wish got a bit more to do before they bite the dust. But overall I think this is a really satisfying conclusion, especially for long-time fans of the show. I think as a film overall, of course, it does suffer from that excessive plot and an inability of time to kind of wrap everything up in a very cohesive way and give all the characters the kind of attention that they deserve. But to take it as an epilogue of a greater whole, I think it does a really fine job. Eivor's music and John Lund's soundtrack has always been probably, you know, the show's biggest asset. The music just transports you instantly, and as soon as I heard the opening credits of this film, I had a grin on my face, I was immersed, I was back into that world. It transports you, and her vocals are so powerful and evocative. I don't think the show would be half what it is today without the music. The cinematography for the show has always been really top notch, and the way that the camera is placed to kind of make locations seem bigger than they are and to make the most of those smaller budgets has always been very tactical but also very aesthetic to watch. Alexander Draymond as Uhtred has always been the heart and soul of The Last Kingdom. It would have been nice, I think, if the film had had a couple of moments to kind of stop and live with the characters for some longer scenes sort of between the chaos and all the plotting and scheming, and getting to see Uhtred, Finan and Sihtric interact, because as side characters I don't think they've ever kind of been given much to do beyond being the kind of comedic reliable sidekicks, and although they have a very great camaraderie as characters, I feel like they've always been slightly underutilised, but they're a very reassuring presence and always a fun presence on the show, and that is no different here. I think the kind of banter and the camaraderie that they do share is so effortless and so natural, It would have been nice if the film had slightly exploited that more. But yeah, plot is nothing to write home about. It's kind of just more of what The Last Kingdom has and always will be, which is just kind of plotting, scheming, unprepared leaders being manipulated, fragile treaties being negotiated, and epic battles being fought. I absolutely don't think it will tarnish the legacy of The Last Kingdom. If anything, it should probably add a little bit more to it. And I think the way it ends is very pertinent, and just the kind of way it builds on that idea of Uhtred being torn between two lives is kind of beautifully illustrated in the final scenes of the film. Even if there was one character who I wish had been a part of that, and once you've seen it I think you'll know what I mean, kind of just make it feel a bit more complete and a bit more definitive. But I think the ending choice and the scenes they chose to wrap up the story with were beautifully staged and shot and acted by everyone, particularly Alexander Draymond. So yeah, if you have seen it guys, please drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Also consider liking and subscribing to the channel guys, that's always a huge help for me, and in the meantime we'll see you for the next vid. Destiny is all.